Misadventures of an Escape Artist, Episode 5. Signed, sealed, and delivered. A few days later, I received my commercial pilot's certificate. After my final flight test, which lasted about an hour and a half, the Transport Canada inspector, Mrs. Gerald, offered me a beer to celebrate. I returned to the residence of Rimouski College, where I ran into a couple of friends. They reminded me that I had promised to take them flying before leaving the region for good. I rented the small Cessna 172. In those days, it was easy to rent a plane from flight school. Today, you are obliged to go up with a flight instructor to prove that you are capable of flying. I took off for a short flight around the region. We could see the beauty of this corner of the world, the wheat fields, the small villages, and the majestic mountains descending towards the St. Lawrence River. As we were walking from the plane to the terminal, to my horror, I suddenly saw Mr. Gerard, the Transport Canada inspector, heading towards the planes. I remembered that 2 hours earlier, I had been drinking a beer with him. The law requires that a pilot who drinks alcohol must not fly for a minimum of 8 hours. 8 hours between bottle and stick is an expression older airlines pilots commonly use. As an inspector at Transport Canada, Mr. Gerard would be obliged to revoke my pilot's license and medical certificate. My career as a pilot would have ended before it had even begun. As we passed each other, I didn't look at the inspector, and he looked straight ahead. Had the inspector not noticed that I had just left the plane, or had he, out of the goodness of his heart, turned a blind eye? Flight instructor, teaching my craft. When I had completed flight school, the world of aviation was changing in the province. Quebec Air was doing very badly and seemed to be on the verge of bankruptcy. Clearly, there were hardly any jobs for a new pilot. In some small aviation companies, jobs were still available for a Navajo co-pilot. The Navajo is a 6-passenger, twin-engine, 2-pilot aircraft. A minimum of 5,000 flying hours was required to apply for this job. I had 250, so my chances were almost zero to get a job as a professional pilot. In the 60s and 70s, Air Canada often refused to hire French-Canadian pilots. The majority of the country was of English descent, and French Quebecois were considered second-class citizens. Due to this injustice, towards the end of Quebec Air, a large French-Canadian airline company called Air Transat was established. Many of the pilots had taken out a second mortgage, each pitching $15,000 to $25,000 to start their own airline. They had banded together, forming their own airline company using wide-bodied aircraft. The first Air Transat jumbo jet took to the skies in November 1987, with 360 passengers bound for Central American beaches. Having almost no chance of finding a job flying after I got my pilot's license, I borrowed a few $1,000s to become a flying instructor. My course was given by Mr. René Dufour. While teaching me the basics of becoming an instructor, he showed me how to do loops on a Cessna 172. It is an aeroplane that is not certified to do this kind of maneuver. The Cessna 172 has a carburetor that cannot operate upside down. Therefore, it is always necessary to keep a 1G force minimum. This is how the loop is done. You nose down and accelerate to the maximum speed. Then you pull up on the joystick to raise the nose of the aircraft towards the sky, and then continue pulling until the aircraft returns to a normal flying position. The maneuver must be done quickly so that the speed of the aircraft does not drop too soon. Thus, it looks like the Earth's gravity pushes you towards the sky. This maneuver, if done rapidly, does not affect the carburetor. In mid-December, I took my final test for my instructor's license with a Transport Canada inspector. One scary flight with a student. I made my first flight as an instructor 2 days later with Mr. Baudry, a man of about 40 who always wanted to learn how to fly. I was also giving theory classes at the University of Sherbrooke. These classes were for people who wanted to obtain their private pilot's license. I remember a flight with a student where the visibility was poor and where I had lost my position. We had taken off from Sherbrooke Airport. The student was in the early stages of learning how to fly. It was our second flight. After about 20 minutes in the air, the weather began to change and a layer of clouds dropped. We were forced to fly at tree level to be able to see anything. We were lost, as we didn't have the proper flight instruments on the plane to allow me to navigate in the clouds without visibility. After about 10 minutes flying by the seat of our pants, we flew over a road. I decided to follow it, hoping it would be the way out of our impending danger. After a minute or two, I suddenly saw a road sign on the highway in front of us. The sign indicated that the next crossroads, if we turned left, we would find the way to Sherbrooke Airport. I made a sharp left turn to follow the road to the landing strip. As soon as the runway was in sight, I landed immediately. After landing safely, we were finally able to breathe. Who would have thought that a traffic sign on the ground would save us from impending doom? After a year and a half as a flight instructor, unable to afford an apartment on my income, I left to work as a full-time musician. My instrument was the bass guitar, and I had the opportunity to change my life, which was going nowhere. I loved being a pilot and my work as an instructor, but I couldn't make ends meet. It made me remember my first adult job when I was 16 at the mental institution.